Imagine waking up in a bed that doesn't feel like yours. The room is too bright and every sound is muffled as if you're underwater. Faces, some familiar, some not, float by speaking to you, but their words drift away just before you can grasp them. This can be what it's like to wake up with aphasia in a hospital. It's similar to the disorientation you feel during a high fever. Simple tasks become difficult and nothing seems to make sense. Voices that should be comforting sound far away and unclear. When people ask you questions, you know what you want to say, but the right words are just out of reach. This experience marks the start of a challenging new chapter. Aphasia has turned language, once a simple tool for connection, into a complex puzzle. Every word and every sentence feels like a piece that doesn't quite fit. But with patience and support, these pieces can start coming together again. This journey is not just about relearning how to speak or write. It's about reconnecting with your loved ones and finding new ways to express your thoughts and feelings.
Welcome to the Listen for Life podcast with Genevieve Richardson. Genevieve is a speech-language pathologist rehabilitating adults with communication challenges after a stroke or due to a neurological impairment. Get equipped with knowledge from experts in the field and professionals you need to know. We'll hear stories and experiences from others who are navigating life with aphasia. So, put your earphones in and take a walk outside. This isn't just a podcast. This is a community, a resource, and a support system. We're in this together. Do life.
My name is Genevieve, and I am a speech-language pathologist. I have been in the field of speech pathology for 30 years. This is the first of 3 eBooks I'm releasing through LIFE Speech Pathology and LIFE Aphasia Academy. Those are both my businesses. One of them, LIFE Speech Pathology, is the business I use to do direct treatment with clients who have aphasia. LIFE Aphasia Academy was designed for a slightly different purpose. It's really there to meet the needs of families, significant others, adult children, young children, neighbors, friends, allies. It's where we're going to be building a community to help you forge your path forward living with aphasia. Unfortunately, aphasia does not go away. It does get better, but it takes absolute motivation and patience and practice. These 3 ebooks started out last year as one ginormous ebook. But with that big book, I felt that the content, there was just too much. So what I did is I broke it into 3 pieces. This first guide is about the shock of aphasia. It's from the initial diagnosis in the hospital up until the point your loved one leaves the hospital to go home, probably with home health. The second book is all about the journey at home. How do you prepare for communication with communication strategies and what you need to know to maximize the efforts of home health therapy coming into your house to support your person. From there, in that second book, we also talk a lot about outpatient therapy because there's other considerations that you need to take into account, things you need to think about. You don't have to settle for the speech pathologist down the street. The world of telepractice is your oyster. It's how you can find the help you need that aligns with your person's goals and can support them as a whole person, and then you with your person with aphasia as a whole family. Our third book in this series is all about chronic aphasia. Chronic aphasia is 6 months or after. That book that I wrote is all about hope, belief, and action, because aphasia is not a passive disease. If you're passive about it, it can lead to isolation. But what I do know from my years of working with this population is that when you have a plan and you put that plan into action, you can live a life you fully love. That third book really goes into the nuances of aphasia and cognition. Cognition is your thinking, who you are. Do you believe you can do better? Are you challenged with depression? Are you challenged with lack of support? Or do you have amazing support but don't know how to use it? The third book is all about helping you, the person with aphasia, and your family and the care partner who's looking out for you, who's advocating for you. Because as your brain heals after a stroke or whatever brought on your aphasia, there are different ways of dealing with it. So I'd like to give you a high-level overview of what's in this ebook and why it's important as you are in this initial stage of your journey. So this book was born out of my desire to help bridge the gap of information and help you feel like someone else knows what you're going through. So I mentioned the 3 books. This first book that I'm talking about, The Shock of Aphasia. The second book, Aphasia's Journey Home. And the third book is Hope, Belief, and Action. Because, like I said earlier, aphasia needs action, not just by the person who has aphasia, but by the people around them. Additionally, with this ebook, you also are being given for free my guide about making informed decisions. This was a guide that when my husband had a family member that he was overseeing for their healthcare decisions. And I interviewed a lot of professionals, from nurse navigators to social workers to elder law attorneys to Medicaid specialists and Medicare specialists. This guide is my research. It's a little raw, but it's chock full of information. And I guarantee there's at least one nugget in this guide that will help you in your path moving forward. So in our ebook, part 1 is about understanding aphasia. Aphasia is a disorder in language. The left side of the brain is where language is stored. Each part of the brain, we have 4 lobes of the brain. Each part is responsible for a different part of language, but they are all interconnected. So if there is damage to one even small part of the brain, it affects and impacts all areas of language. Maybe it's just a mild impairment, maybe it's severe. But what this ebook goes into is helping you understand a little bit about aphasia. So, language, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. We can have different kinds of aphasia. If we're painting with a broad brush, let's talk about fluent aphasia and non-fluent aphasia. Fluent aphasia presents as someone sounds like they should be making sense. Perhaps it's someone like you would imagine is speaking in a foreign language. Their facial expression and their tone of voice and their body language all seems to go along with the words that they're saying. But when you listen closely, not all of the words make sense. Just like the title sounds, non-fluent has to do, there's more of a halting speech, more hesitant. Some of the sounds may not come out right. They may not be able to move their mouth well. The brain has this amazing ability to improve with time. We call it spontaneous recovery. And spontaneous recovery happens on its own. And depending on the research that you look at, it can go for 3 months to 6 months. What we want to do in this early recovery phase, the spontaneous recovery phase, is to maximize the rehab your loved one is receiving, to maximize the benefits. Someone might start with a Wernicke's aphasia and improve their language, their listening, and all of that. And they may end up with more of an anomic or a conduction aphasia, which is less impaired than a Wernicke's. Or someone might start out with a Broca's aphasia and they might improve to a transcortical motor. Recovery is not linear. Aphasias are as unique to people as fingerprints are as unique to people. So your left hemisphere is a powerhouse for your language. Speaking, listening, reading, writing also plays a huge role in your social interactions. We talked about fluent and non-fluent aphasia, but let's talk about some other terms you may be hearing about your loved one, especially in the early days and weeks in the hospital. We need to talk about swallowing. Swallowing disorder is called dysphagia or dysphagia. It seems to depend on where you live across the United States as to how it's pronounced. Dysphagia is a swallowing disorder. The swallowing mechanism is very complex. There is a lot of systems that need to coordinate together for your loved one to be able to drink water, to be able to chew food and swallow. So the consequence of having dysphagia means they are at risk for aspiration. Aspiration means food, liquid, or saliva passes past the level of the vocal cords and into the airway. Let's talk about the consequence of aspiration. When foreign bodies get into your lungs make mucus. That's when you start coughing things up. So if food, liquid, saliva get into your airway, you run the risk of developing pneumonia. And the most simplistic way I can explain pneumonia is when your lungs make mucus to help expel foreign bodies out of your lungs. But if you make too much mucus or you keep adding foreign bodies into your airway, your lungs can't then process oxygen out of the blood. So dysphagia is the word, dysphagia, depending on where you live across the country. Aspiration pneumonia is what we don't want to happen. So who deals with swallowing issues? Your friendly speech pathologist in the hospital is trained and is a specialist in diagnosing where in the system the swallowing problem is breaking down. And then she or he has the tools and the strategies and the therapy methods to help manage that. It might mean thickened liquids. It might mean changing the consistency of the food your loved one is eating. It might mean they have to do something called a chin tuck or a supraglottic swallow, or they might have to turn their head when they're drinking. My point in telling you all of this, if you go into your loved one's bedside and there's probably a big yellow, red, orange sign that says modified diet, swallowing problems, dysphagia, do not give water without getting instruction, you need to please pay attention to that. It means that the person has dysphagia. There is a problem, they're under treatment, and there are modifications that need to be in place to help prevent aspiration pneumonia. But the great news in 2024, there are some wonderful swallowing therapy techniques that your speech pathologist knows that can help your loved one. I just want you to be aware of dysphagia and aspiration pneumonia. Let's talk about a couple of other terms that you might hear about your loved one as they are in the hospital in these initial stages. A speech pathology term is called dysarthria. Dysarthria refers to muscle weakness of the mouth, and that presents like slurred speech. Have you ever gone to the dentist and had a shot of Novocaine when they filled the cavity? And you know how your tongue felt really thick and maybe one side of your mouth was numb and you talked really funny and you really had to overcompensate to try and sound normal like you hadn't been drinking? That is dysarthria. Another term you might hear is apraxia of speech. Apraxia of speech means there's been damage near the Broca's area in the brain, and it's an added complication to Broca's aphasia. The person with apraxia of speech may not be able to stick their tongue out at you or pucker their lips on command or blow out a candle. The other term you may be hearing is limb apraxia. Apraxia is the disconnect between the thought or the intention and getting the muscles to cooperate and follow through. So limb apraxia can present by someone not being able to put their thumb up or thumb down, even with help. So let's talk about how you, the significant other, the family of the person with aphasia, how can you extend your support to them? The best thing you can do is to be present and be observant. Know that your person is doing the absolute best they can. Their brain is in a healing phase, and they may need extra time. They may need some quiet. They may need you just to sit at their bedside and hold their hand and to give them smiles. And to be there as kind of to bridge that gap. Please be patient. The worst thing you can do with your person who has aphasia is to quiz. Honey, do you remember this? What do you call this? What do you call this? What do you call this? Don't quiz. Please, I beg of you, do not quiz. It puts undue pressure on the person with aphasia, and it makes them feel bad. Some might be able to do it. Some might be able to name these things, but many will not be able to do so. So please avoid quizzing. Situational awareness matters. If you're going to be at the bedside, allow the therapist, the nurses, the doctors, the staff that comes in to work with your person, let them do their job. Watch, observe, take notes, and then when it's appropriate, ask questions. They need your silent support. Please try to give that to them. Expect changes. You can see dramatic improvements from one day to the next. Wins are to be celebrated, but don't harp on them. If you see a win 3 days in a row and you don't see a win for 3 days, like something is not significantly better, it doesn't mean recovery is over. It means the brain is still healing, and the brain is complex. Think about all the things we expect of our thinking and our communication and what we expect our body to do. All of that has to get rewired. I often think about a stroke that causes aphasia as a filing cabinet, a very complex filing cabinet, and your 2-year-old just went through that filing cabinet and pulled out the folders and the papers, and it's all crazy all over the floor. That has to get cleaned up. It has to get reorganized. It has to get refiled. The brain is no different when your loved one has aphasia. It takes time. Help your person with aphasia is to create a communication book for them. They may be virtually nonverbal, meaning they're not getting any words out. They may not be able to say when they're hungry, they're thirsty, or they need to go to the bathroom. Or if they're in pain, maybe you have to just be an observer to see these things and ask questions. They may not be able to initiate. Or they may be able to say things to you, but maybe the words don't make any sense and you're still confused. Aphasia should not and does not define them as a person. They are a person first with an identity, with dreams, with memories, with a job, with a career, with relationships, with interests and hobbies and community and whatever it is. They are a person first who now has aphasia. This communication book can serve as a lifeline for them. My team and I, we created a comprehensive communication book so you don't have to figure out how to do it. Included is a communication book. We made it as simple as we could to help you execute. If you are the spouse and you come across these resources and you want to make this communication book for your loved one, we made it as simple as possible with instructions. Better yet, give the communication book PDF to someone you trust and ask them to execute. We have the communication book broken down into sections. There's the first section that is the most important that we highly recommend. Get printed at a professional printer. And I'm talking like Office Depot, Staples, one of those, FedEx Office, Kinko's, whatever they're called. Get that original part printed because it's in color. And color is motivating for folks with aphasia. It helps them to start differentiating sections of this book. You'll need a 3-ring binder. Get this professionally printed, 3-hole punch, put it in a binder with some dividers. Nothing fancy. Then there's another section of the communication book that is very easy as your person progresses through rehab. Maybe they need to start writing things down. Maybe you want to use the communication book as a communication hub for friends and family that come in to visit, where you can write notes in it for the next family member that comes in so that they know what's going on, what the updates are, if there's maybe a diet modification update, or if maybe communication strategies have been updated and there's other things that work better than they worked 2 weeks ago. So it's important. This communication book can serve as that hub, not only for communicating amongst yourselves as a family and community, supporting your person with aphasia, but also for the person with aphasia themselves. We designed the outside page to have their name on it and some very simple strategies. I have a team member that works with me at Life Speech Pathology and Life Aphasia Academy. She came down with aphasia after COVID. She had had COVID a couple of times, and she has aphasia that impacts her ability to speak. Some days are better than others. She gets like these flare-ups. It's a little different than aphasia that comes along with a stroke. Hers can fluctuate based on how she's feeling that day, emotions and stress. When I talked to her very candidly about her experience of being in the hospital, because she didn't have a stroke, she was kind of in this weird middle ground. The neurologist knew she had aphasia, but she looked good. She didn't have weakness on one side of her body. She could comprehend a lot, but she would fatigue very quickly and not be able to comprehend everything. Aphasia does not mean hearing loss. Raising your volume does not mean they're going to understand you any better. But if you speak simply, pause in between sentences, give them time to process information, give them the opportunity to understand what you're saying and what's going on around them. On the outside page of this communication book that we designed it to go on literally on the outside cover, you know, that plastic see-through outside cover of a 3-ring binder. Put this page there. It says, don't yell, pause, give me time. And there's some other strategies on there. Going on with our ebook, the rehab team. The ebook goes into a little bit more about the role of the physicians, the case managers, the nurses. What are the physical therapists doing in these early stages of rehab? And I'm talking about the early medical stage as well as the acute rehab. Acute rehab, another way to think of it is inpatient. Your person is still living in a hospital-like setting, but getting rehab there in the hospital. So the ebook goes more into what is a physical therapist looking at in those early stages? What are they looking at during the inpatient rehab stages? What are some key terms you're going to hear about? What on earth is gait? If you're not in the business, you may not know what gait is. You may not fully understand what range of motion is, what mobility aids are, endurance training. Occupational therapists work on activities of daily living, and you're probably thinking, what on earth is that? Getting dressed, brushing your teeth, washing your face, eating, activities of daily living. It's the things we take for granted, but when you've had a stroke, with or without aphasia, it impacts your ability to complete these tasks of daily living. So the ebook goes into key vocabulary with occupational therapists. Then there's the section about speech-language pathologists. What is our role in aphasia treatment? How does that role change during the acute medical stage versus the acute rehab stage? And I'll give you a little hint. Acute medical stage, we're just trying to get a sense of who your person is, what are their strengths, and how do we start getting some strategies, some communication strategies into place. And then we start working on the rehab. We start working on those impairment levels. If they're having trouble listening, we start working on listening comprehension. That's one of the most fundamental areas we need to start working on. And then expressing themselves, basic wants and needs. If they're nonverbal or they have a non-fluent aphasia where they're having trouble getting out their words, we need to find them an alternative way to communicate. And this is where that communication book can really play a positive role in helping them communicate. In our communication book, there's some basic pictures. There's some basic information forms that you, the significant other, the family can fill out to help your person with aphasia communicate. And then the speech pathologists that work with your person can also add into that communication book because it is a living, breathing tool to help with communication. In the initial stages, the speech pathologist is going to be concerned about swallowing. That is first and foremost because we don't want to add aspiration pneumonia onto their recovery plan. We want to prevent that and maximize quality of life because I don't know about you, but I would not want to drink thickened orange juice or thickened coffee unless I absolutely had to. So a speech pathologist early on is going to work on swallowing, early communication strategies as your person moves into inpatient medical rehabilitation. Then your speech pathologist is going to be working at that impairment level, really digging into what are the most important skills to be working on. And then there's a lot of education and training that goes on with you, the significant other, and the family members. In the ebook, that communication book is a visual aid. What's another visual aid? Saying, maybe your person is able to drink water. Honey, would you like a glass of water? And you hold up the glass of water. You're giving context, a visual that goes with your words. Honey, are you cold? And you do a gesture like you're cold. Or you look hot. Are you hot? Or you've got a stressed look on your face. Do you need the bathroom? Do you need the bathroom over here? Use visual aids. Give context. This gentleman said, silence is golden, or just shut up. I can't tell you how important it is. Quiet and space and time to process goes a long way with your person who has aphasia. I want to give you a little insight into aphasia. Your person may have a really hard time even formulating their thoughts. Have you ever woken up from a dream and maybe it was an upsetting dream, or maybe it was a great dream and you want to share it with somebody, but you're still kind of foggy as you're still waking up and you're trying to say things, but you know how dreams are? They don't all fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, right? There's gaps. And what your brain does when you've been dreaming is it tries to fill in those gaps. It has to fill in those gaps even more when you go to describe something verbally. Where I'm going with this is your person with aphasia may have trouble even formulating their thought. They might have trouble just getting the concept into their head, and then they have to figure out a way to communicate it, provide context that goes along with the visual aids, and use alternative communication modes. Moving on, part 4 of the ebook, You Are Not Alone. And this part is aimed directly at you, the care partner, the spouse, the significant other, the main person that is looking out for your person who has aphasia. You are not alone. All of those staff are there to help you. Yes, they're busy, and you may not want to interrupt them. But when there's information you need to get those answers. Write them down so that you can find the right time to ask them the questions. Ask questions. Again, go back to that notebook. Write it down as you think of it. Keep that notebook with you because I guarantee you're going to think of a question. That notebook is your lifeline to write down the question right then so you don't forget it. Because what is so important when you are dealing with stress and overwhelm and fatigue and exhaustion? I want to leave you today and let you know you are not alone. This is a hard journey. I get it. I've worked with hundreds of people in my career. The best I can do is to help support you as you move through this journey by empowering you with information, support, and resources. And I hope that you do feel supported with this ebook and audio and video and all the supplemental material. I am Genevieve. I'm a speech pathologist, Life Speech Pathology, and Life Aphasia Academy. We are here to help you wherever you are on your journey with aphasia. We can help both you, the family, as well as your loved one with aphasia. Do lifespeechpathology.com because every person and every family living with aphasia deserves to be seen, heard, and understood.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen for Life podcast. We hope you feel empowered and supported. Head over to listenforlifepodcast.com to see the show notes with links and information from today's episode. Do you have a topic, a resource to share, or a guest recommendation? Inquiring minds want to know. Let us know in the comments section. Wishing you a fabulous week.